Well, blimey, would you look at the Big Ben? It's time for the Academy of Imperfection, a conversational lecture series where experts in their field share their wisdom on the subject of imperfection. Today, we welcome renowned meditation teacher and the actual voice from the Calm app, Jeff Warren.
I just don't want to create any barriers to people. And people hear mindfulness now, there's all kinds of responses to it. There's people who have their own tribal responses. No, I know this is what the real mindfulness is. No, this is this mindfulness. There's people who hate hearing about mindfulness because it sounds like eating your vegetables and it's freaking boring hearing about mindfulness all the time. And so you're going to get a whole set of reactions. And my meta interest is, the examined life. Like, how do we learn these good habits? How can we relate to each other in a way that's just going to create less suffering and more awesome?
So before you get your knickers in a twist, join students Hugh Van Kylenberg, Ryan Shelton, and Josh Van Kylenberg as they, on behalf of the Imperfects, make themselves as present as possible for today's corker of a lesson.
All right. Well, we're back in the Academy. I love the Academy of Imperfection.
It's definitely a very popular format. And I think I've said this before, but I think it's my favorite because I just walk away. I just learned so much. So I certainly love the Academy.
Yeah, just to put the most possible pressure on the guest waiting as we can.
Don't worry, you won't learn anything with me.
So today, you just heard his voice, but today in the Academy, our lecturer is a Canadian man called Jeff Warren. Now, for anyone, people may recognize that voice, or you may recognize the name if you do currently meditate with the Calm app. So, as we have been doing recently, guys, and it's becoming a habit, I've written an introduction to the guest. So don't freak out.
Oh, I just feel like some people listening who heard Jeff's voice very quickly then straight over, they would have had this sense of calm just come up. Yeah. So many people meditate with the Calm app. So many people are like, oh, I know that voice. Yeah. I know who it is.
Yeah. Okay, so for those who don't, Jeff Warren is a writer and a meditation teacher. He's taught meditation to US Army cadets, Google executives, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, caregivers, teens, journalists, formerly incarcerated youths. He wrote a book called The Head Trip, Adventures on the Wheel of Consciousness, which The Guardian in the UK named one of the top 10 books about consciousness. And he is the co-author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics, and has appeared on The Joe Rogan Experience and 10% Happier, among many other shows. But for me, Jeff is one of the first voices I hear every single morning when I do my 10-minute calm meditation with Jeff's daily trip. And I just love it because it's, I only just got into meditation in the last 2 years, thanks to this guest, Jeff Warren. He does a how to meditate course, like a 30-day course on the Calm app, which is this really accessible. Not that I was a skeptic, but I always for years found it really hard to kind of get a regular practice going. And Jeff's sort of approach and his demeanor and sense of humor in it is the first time that I think connected to someone, was able to do it regularly. So anyway, I'll shut up. Jeff Warren, thanks for joining the Academy of Imperfection.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. If it's about imperfection, then I feel I'm in the right place. So,
oh, good. No, I thought maybe usually a good place to start is how you got into how and why you got into meditation and mindfulness in the first place.
I was a journalist and I was working for CBC Radio, and I was a stressed out journalist. And I got I've always been interested in the brain, mind, how it all works. So I was doing a lot of shows about that, doing a lot of stories on that. And I basically left to write a book about how that all works. That was The Head Trip. And over the course of writing that book, I already knew a lot about meditation, just had been reading a bit, but that's when I started actually practicing. Because I knew that I could kind of get into the neuroscience or whatever, but the real experts of how to of what's going on and how to regulate it. Cause that's the real issue, is that I was crazy. I was having I was just couldn't control my mind. I had a lot of suffering, and I was very kind of, had a lot of challenges that way. So I knew that I wanted to have part of that book to look at meditation. So I knew I had to actually do it, because that was what the book was about, is about sort of a first person experience and what that shows us, what's going on in the brain. And so I started doing it, and I found it helpful. It's not like I can't really give you a Disneyland answer that I did it and everything was better, because it didn't really work out that way. It's a much more complicated sort of story. But basically, the practice ended up being quite life-changing in terms of the perspective it gave me and the tools and the kind of journey that kicked off. And eventually, in a way that was super unexpected for me, it led into me, teaching it and sharing practice and guiding and so now, for that reason too, it's really transformed my life, because now I can make a living. I couldn't really make a living before as a journalist. I was pretty much living pretty hand to mouth there. So that's the beginning of an answer, and I could go into drill down in any directions there. But yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing that jumps out to me, because I've heard so many people talk about, like, they started meditating and it changed their life.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I kind of get it a little bit more now that I've been doing it more regularly. But the thing, I think, for people who have never started, for me at least, I used to hear that and think, yeah, but what sort of meditate? Like, what did you physically do that when you sat down, because people who maybe don't know a lot about it, or it's never really clicked with them, they're maybe imagining you in like a silent retreat with your legs crossed kind of thing. It's like, but how did it actually?
Yeah. Well, some of it was that. I mean, I have a different way of the real life answer, and then I can give you the teacher answer. The real life answer is I just bungled my way through with lots of different kinds of teachers and techniques, and kind of figured out what I liked and what I didn't like, and what seemed like bullshit and what seemed like it was helping. And that was sort of, I had a long lived experience of kind of working that out. But now as someone who guides it, I start from a place of, you got to make it really, it is the essence of simplicity. That's kind of what practice is. It's about, I mean, I'm sure you had the experience of feeling like you're just crowded in your own brain in your life. Like your brain is crowded with worries. It's crowded with preoccupations. You feel like you're just like subject to them. You don't really have much control over it. It's just like you're in these loops. That's what my brain was like. And that's what my experience was like. So, meditation is basically learning how to make space in that. And the beginning of making space is just stopping. It's not more complicated than that. It's just stopping, and it's noticing that I'm crowded with these worries in my life, and I'm going to just stop and sit here. And it's the skill of learning how to not feed those worries. It's just a rote skill at the beginning. It's you're thinking about all your stuff, and then your mind wanders, and you move it over to the breath, and it stays there a bit, then it wanders off. And so it's like an exercise thing. So you just do that at the beginning. And then as you get a little more used to it, you start to see what's going on. You start to see what's happening in your mind. Like, if I want to get someone to meditate, this is what I say. I say, okay, let's do it right now. We'll do 2 minutes with you and your audience. I say,
great.
And I'll say it's like, imagine you just come back from a long day's work. You've been at it all day, you're tired, and you got a couple minutes here. You're sitting on your front stoop or your porch or your deck or whatever, or your fire escape in the city. And you're just taking a load off. You don't need to be anywhere else. There's nowhere else you actually want to be right now. You just want to sit and listen to maybe the sound of traffic or whatever the sound is coming over the fields. And you just sit and be. It's about sitting and being and enjoying your own company for a few beats, period. And then the mind, of course, wanders here and there. Not a big deal. You notice it drifting around. Okay. Then you come back to just sort of sitting here and being. It is the capacity to kind of be and not do in this basic way. Not that the doing will stop, but it's like there is a kind of permissiveness and presentness inside the way you're just hanging out here. and it gives the nervous system a little chance to reset. Things settle a bit, feel a little bit more, and everyone can relate to this experience. You feel a little bit more centered and available in your life. It's like, okay. And then you get up and you go back into your day and you're just a little bit more there. And that's my baseline. That's everyone's baseline, just the being. And then if you want to get into it more, I can say, okay, let me show you about these skills. That simple thing you did there, which seemed like nothing, was actually this rich kind of mini exploration. You were actually doing a little workout of these parts of your being, you could say, these things that support us being in this life in a really huge way. And they're all kind of active there and to different degrees. And we can get more deliberate about how we make them even more active. And as you do that, then it becomes it's a fun thing. It's like playing, or it's like DJing. You get your hands in the controls, you can kind of like, mess with the mixer a bit. And so that's what I think of the going deeper into it, is this practice is a deeply creative thing that we get into, that you don't have to just take all this as a given. You can start to make some changes in how you're relating to the world in a way it actually can get pretty freaking magical and cool. And it doesn't go into crazyville. It goes into a pretty soulful direction if you're paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't sure how much of that was the meditation, so I was like reluctant to jump in.
I was in the meditation and I forgot I was supposed to do that, and I was somewhere else, and that's what it was.
Like, because I know what your meditation, your voice style is. So at some point, it became more conversation. I was like, I think he's stopped.
Yeah, I think I should have had a little bell.
Yeah.
So can I jump in now? Is that all right?
Please,
yeah,
it's your show as well.
No. No, this really fascinates me, Jeff. So I, just a very quick background. I don't want to bore our listeners who know what I do, but for the last 10 years, I've been running around Australia and a little bit in New Zealand as well, talking about introducing the concepts of gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness. Mm-hmm. And they're things that back in 2008, I was volunteering in a village up in the far north of India with it's a Buddhist community. And I remember the kids before school, they would sit there and they were like this. It's for half an hour before school, optional. And I thought they were saying their prayers. And I thought, gosh, what a religious community. And the principal said, no, they're doing meditation. And 13 years ago, I thought, gosh, what a ridiculous waste of time, these poor kids. But then I realized it was optional, and no one needed to be there. Every single person turned up. And I remember thinking, gosh, there must be something in this. So I joined in, and it had a profound impact on me, just sitting doing nothing for half an hour. It was all in Ladakhi, the way it was explained, or Hindi, the way it was explained what they were doing. So I didn't know what really I didn't understand the instructions, but I just sat there for half an hour, and I didn't talk, and I would sit there at least for half an hour. Since then, I've come back to Australia, and I am not an expert on mindfulness, far from it, but I do think I've become an expert on getting people to try it at least.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: with talking about gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness. Gratitude, empathy, yep, thanks to you, that sounds really great. I get criticized so much for different reasons. Different people who are right into mindfulness will say, no, that's not mindfulness. You're actually, it's too simple what you're saying. Or I'm blown away by the ego attached to people who have practiced mindfulness for a long time. And I love, the email, when Ryan reached out to you and said, would you be interested in coming on our podcast? Your reply was, I'll just get this up, sorry. Your reply was, Ryan, nice to meet you. I'm only qualified to do one thing in the world, talk about my own imperfection. For this reason, I accept your invitation, although I can't guarantee I won't leave you and your listeners with new mental health problems. I have this thing, but having been in education for a long time, you only really learn from people you like. And I find like a lot of people who are experts in mindfulness, I find them hard to really relate to, and I like you a lot already, just based on your email and chatting to you so
Congratulations,
far.
Congratulations,
Jeff. Made in the club. Oh, cool. I'm coming to Australia. I hope you got room in your basement.
I'm fascinated by, so this is what I say to people when I talk about mindfulness, because I want it to be a very simple, accessible thing, which I get criticized for a lot. A lady once sent me a 5-page letter about why I wasn't smart enough to be talking about mindfulness. And then she sent me a book and she said, you're not smart enough to read it, but here you go anyway.
That's awesome.
So I get stuff like that.
People like you too.
I'm not smart enough. I didn't understand it. She was right. Anyway, I remember my wife, I started to open the page and my wife grabbed it and threw it in the bin. She said, that's just ridiculous, and threw the letter away. But so here's what I say mindfulness is. It makes me nervous already saying it. But anyway, I say to people, mindfulness is the ability to just be wherever you are. For me, that's what I feel like mindfulness is. And I feel like we're not good at being wherever we are. Our thoughts go to the future, they go to the past. And that's what I say, because I want it to be the most simple and quick introduction to it. And one of the ways I say this is the way I do it. I walk a lap of the block. This is for my meditation, and I pay attention to what I can hear. And it's crazy. Like on a lap of the block, I reckon 30 times my thoughts will go to the future or to the past or what, and I just go, oh no, hang on, no, what can I hear? That's first of all how I define mindfulness in a way that's relatable, I hope. And then that's also one of the ways I tell people to practice. I'm so interested in, if someone says to you, what is mindfulness, how you define it quickly for them, if you're giving a talk or, and then what are some of the ways that you say, and here's some nice ways to practice it.
I can take this, Jeff, if you want.
Yeah. Would you mind?
Oh, no, maybe actually.
Because I'm already confused. No, I mean, I guess what would I say? Okay. So there's a few things to say. I mean, I'll answer the mindfulness question, then maybe I'll back up a little bit. For me, the mindfulness, it depends who I'm talking to. So, if I was just talking to just an average person who wants a little more about it, I would just say, it's kind of the art of being present in a way that's a little more relaxed. I just wouldn't make it into some big thing. If I was talking to someone who wanted to have a little more rigor around it, I really like my teacher's definition of mindfulness as a 3-part attentional skill set. So the skill of concentration, the skill of clarity, and the skill of equanimity, of bringing those 3 together.
Wow.
And I can describe with great detail exactly what each of those skills are and how they exist right now in your present moment. And it's basically kind of like learning that you have these invisible muscles that are always operating, but you don't know how. Everyone's muscles are all flabby and no one knows because they don't know how to find them, because you don't think about mind having muscles like this. So I can break those down, and it's super helpful to do that. And I think that's what I do in the Calm course, and that's what a lot of people find relatable. But some people aren't going to want that level of technical detail, but some people are. So that's how I would begin to talk about the mindfulness question. But just to back up, I mean, I don't consider myself, I like mindfulness. I think it's been a huge and important tool in my tool set. But my primary interest is practice. It's how we get through this thing called life, and it's how practice and it's how good habits can help us support us get through this thing. And those good habits they can look like all different kinds of things for different people. They can look like the good habit of prioritize taking some time to walk in the woods, or to play with your dog. They can look like knowing how to have an intelligent, knowing how to communicate effectively with your partner. They look like knowing how to get into flow of playing music or playing ball or some whatever game you guys play over there, rugby, beating the hell out of each other, Australian style. Hey, that can be a practice. And I can tell you exactly what those basic skills I just described, along with the skill of care, they're the undercurrent of every practice out there. And when you understand, they're kind of at the headwaters of mental and emotional health. And when you understand how they work, then you can begin to look at your life right now, and you can turn up the dials on these different things. And you don't have to ever go and do this special kind of mindfulness thing. So, I mean, I just don't want to create any barriers to people. And people hear mindfulness now, and there's all kinds of responses to it. There's people who have their own tribal responses. No, I know this is what the real mindfulness is. No, this is this mindfulness. There's people who hate hearing about mindfulness because it sounds like eating your vegetables, and it's freaking boring hearing about mindfulness all the time. And so you're going to get a whole set of reactions. And I do talk about it in the right kind of context, but my meta interest is sort of like, the examined life. Like, how do we learn these good habits, and how can we relate to each other in a way that's just going to create less suffering and more awesome? That would be what I would say.
Think that, I mean, I think it would be really cool for you to go into detail on those points that you just mentioned. But one thing I'll just say is that was one of the things, now that you say it, that really helped me do it more regularly, which was just like essentially your encouragement to just show up every day. And not having the pressure to be really good at it. Like, I've probably been doing it relatively regularly for maybe a year and a half, 10 minutes every morning. And I reckon like 50 to 60%, maybe even more, I don't feel like I did a good job of it.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel like I was meditating or I was present. My mind wanders a lot and I'm constantly thinking about the things I have to do. Like I do it all the time. And I used to think if that's happening, then I'm not good at it and I lose interest and I stop. But the constant, the encouragement from you on the Calm app was me just going, okay, well, all I have to, like, if meditation is just the practice of coming back to the present moment, not necessarily staying in it.
Exactly.
That was the thing that really got it for me. That really clicked.
The practice of coming back, not staying in it, because no one can stay in it. You're always going to get pulled out. So it's like, oh yeah, it's starting to get a taste for what being present means. It starts out as just this ridiculous cliche, and then you start to realize that it actually means something. That there's, the way I think about being present is availability. Are you actually available for what's happening right now? Or am I in my own fixation? Am I able to look at this computer and see you two guys sitting here and go, oh yeah, okay. And I know there's this third guy over there somewhere. Can I, there's his hand. Can I see you guys? Can I actually listen to what you're saying and kind of be available for it? Or am I going to be in this loop of thinking how I got to make this work this way? I got to manage this, or I got to control these outcomes and all of that stuff, which prevents us from actually making contact with the scene in front of us, the people in front of us in a full way. And, this is all about gradients. It's like people hear this, they're like, well, yeah, but I'm present. It's like, you can be present and you can be really present. It's sort of like you start to realize what that means. Like so much of our life, we walk around and we're kind of half there. And you're kind of half there at dinner, and someone's talking to you and you're kind of half listening and you're half thinking about something else. And this is a very common human experience. It's happening all the time. So it's beginning to notice that and being able to make a decision. Okay, do I want to stay thinking about this? Because it might be actually more interesting than what's in front of me. Maybe you do. Or do I want to can I notice that and bring my attention back to what's here? And it's that continual coming back.
But I mean, like that. What's interesting to me, and I didn't, nor should I know that. You mentioned before we started recording that you have ADD, and that really interests me because I feel like even just what you said before about sitting on the deck and just that immediate like slowness that you were able to kind of just harness in a second was, I mean, for me at least, that was quite powerful. Like that's quite amazing that I guess you've done it with a lot of practice. But do you mind talking about like your ADD and how, if that's played a part at all and how that's affected your practice? And
yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. And not just ADD, I also have a bipolar diagnosis. So you got a whole bouquet of mental health expertise happening inside this freakish noggin of mine. So pretty mild bipolar, but very real, and at times has been an insane challenge in my life. So both those things have taught me a lot about meditation's taught me a lot about how to work with both those conditions. And it's taught me kind of different things. I guess so the first thing is in the beginning, you can't, so ADD, there's different ADD profiles. So different people have different kinds of ADD. The kind I had was the super, distractible kind, like, golden retriever brain, like just off every 2 seconds, on whatever the new shiny bauble is in front of me. But I also had the hyper focus thing where I would get hyper fixated on what I was into. So when I began meditation, I was into it. So I was able to hyper focus in a way so I could get into these deep kind of concentrated states, but it was not relaxing. It was like this thing that I had to learn. And what you bring in ADD is like this cumulative sense of failure because you just have not been able to get your shit together for so many zillions of times. You've been so blown out and scattered and you've disappointed so many people. So there was a sort of desperation in the way I approach meditation. Like, this is going to work because I don't know what else is going to. So I had this really I could get really deep in these certain states of absorption, but there was no tranquility. There was no peace. And eventually I started to notice that, if I'm not finding how to have more peace in my heart, then something is really going wrong here. So when I made this change, I started to focus on different things in my practice. I started to focus much more, first of all, on the acceptance of everything. This is who I am. I got this attentional profile. It's not, maybe it can change a bit through meditation, but I got to just accept that there's gifts with this and there's challenges. So there was a lot of practicing acceptance. There's a lot of learning how to have compassion for myself, seeing, oh, dude, you're in a rough spot right now. And like, I would feel that for somebody else, but I didn't have any way to do it for myself. Like I didn't buy it, coming from me, or I thought it was kind of being weak or being a wuss. So I learned that to see those layers of judgments and just get over that. And so that made a difference, starting to be friendlier that way. And then I learned.
How did. Oh,
well,
sorry,
I'll just say the
Jeff.
last thing, and then I'll answer
sure.
that. But the last thing, I just want to forget it. Then I learned that the real refreshment of an ADD mind isn't some refined state of concentration or absorption. It's right here. The ADD mind can come pop right back. The ADD mind is the golden retriever mind. You forget where you were and you're back here, refreshed. And it's noticing the kind of refreshment of the present moment. Like this place right here that I was constantly coming back to. All of a sudden being, quote, ADD wasn't a problem. The problem was all the agonizing I was bringing with it. That the refreshment of coming back to the present moment is the very thing you're after in mindfulness. So that being ADD or having that profile, that's a gift. You just have to know how to work with it. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that maybe answers my question, because what I was going to ask is like the distractible part of your ADD. I was going to ask how did you manage that, because that seems like, as far as someone who wants to be present and to be able to meditate, that seems like the worst possible thing to have to deal with.
It is, and it was like I still consider that this is part of my. I don't think I am ADD. I think I have ADD. It's a visitor. So there are times when I'm very scattered and blown out, and I have that my mind is jumping all over. And in those times, I'm just like, oh yeah, guess who's here? It's like having this super scatterbrained visitor come and put Post-it notes all over everything. So I just know that that's who's here. And then there's times when the ADD cools out, and and I'm just more centered and present. And so noticing that is huge. There's not a person on the planet who has, quote, ADD where this isn't true. Every mind state changes. There's times where it's more intense, and there's times when there's less intense. Even if that is quite a small range there, as you zoom in on it and start to live in it, it becomes a more profound range. And in the noticing what it's like to be more settled and still, as you zoom in on that taste, that flavor, that becomes more accessible moment to moment too. So even when I'm in an ADD state, I can sort of zoom in. It sounds weird to try to talk about. I can zoom in on what's sort of peaceful and unchanging in my experience, even with the ADD there. And it's not a problem. It's like, I remember having an experience of getting really stoned once, like after a meditation retreat. And at this point, I was so in the zone with the meditation, I could kind of see the being highness, and I could just still be right here. And I could go in the being highness, or I could just let it kind of, do its thing. It's like that with, you can kind of get that perspective around. I could see that my body was high, but I didn't need to be in the highness. I could kind of be in this place of just sort of watching it in a more spacious place around it. And the practice will give you that. Just sitting after what
sounds like you were really high.
Maybe I was just really high and deluding myself. My experience was that I thought I had some space around it. So
I had this ability to like put on a unicorn's face and travel to any country in seconds. It's incredible practice.
It was amazing. Are we talking about meditation, or are we talking about psychedelics now?
Yeah. I mean, you always know it's a good academy of imperfection when your mind. I'm finding it very hard to be present, right? Because there's so many questions I want to ask, and I'm trying to think of what people want to hear more about, and I'm struggling with that a little bit at the moment.
Well, I'll make it relatable to the people's present moment mind experience. So whatever you ask, I'll try to do that. So it'll always be
good. I love that. So I can't help but go to for a number of reasons. First of all, it's my job, but second of all, I have kids. I'm fascinated. Mindfulness for kids. Do you asked to do much in schools? If not, if someone says, how would you recommend my child practices mindfulness? Where do you start there?
Well, I mean, you start with yourself. So, you are your kid's first teacher in a big way. So, and that means your presence, like your capacity to just sort of be present and available and being solid for your kid. I mean, that's a kind of transmission or whatever you want to call it, like social contagion. That's a teaching that your kid's nervous system is going to pick up on. So that's where it begins. It begins with seeing that you're about to fly off the handle because you're just so tired and your kid's being so crazy, and backing off from that and taking a few deep breaths, and you model regulation. And I mean, the more you do that, the more your kid will just kind of learn it through their pores. I mean, I think that's the main thing. And it can be imperfect, just like you have to have a realistic take on parenting. Everyone's doing the best they can, and there's all kinds of different stressors. So, but I would say beginning there. And then I guess, as kids get older, I have some on my website. I made some kid meditations for kids from like 5 to 11 that this friend of mine asked me to do. And we put sound effects in and things. And what I've noticed working with kids that age, I don't think you can really do much in terms of like teaching a kid to meditate before they're like 3 or 4. I don't know if you want to. But what I would say is kids are enormously creative, and they don't know what they don't know. So they can they're way better students than adults in some ways. So you make it a game, you make it a game of like, okay, move really fast. Now stop. Can you just stop right here? And it's like you're a ninja. And now you stop and you let all the little bubbly energy come down a little bit. And then you get ready to move again. And then you stop, or you make it a game like that. Or I do this thing with the elevator, like, okay, imagine you're in an elevator and you're going down, down, down to slow land. Now we're in slow land. What's it like here? There's a bird, and then or they're down, and you got to speed them up a bit, and you get them to go to color land, or so you use kids' imagination to tap into it, and they'll pick up the skills. But it definitely is helpful to learn a little bit about. I mean, that's kind of an off the cuff answer. I mean, there are pros who really know how to do this, but definitely a useful thing for a parent to check out a few things on mindfulness with kids. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we do all types of different things with kids in schools, and just listening to you speak, I'm feeling very reaffirmed that we're definitely doing the right thing. Whether it's, with the classrooms we work with, we'll say to teachers that it's like anything else. Everyone's got different learning styles, so you can't lie them all on the floor and listen to a set like a guided meditation. That's gonna be. I mean, the kids who can't do that are gonna probably hijack the whole situation by mucking around and ruin it for everyone. So we'll say there's one school we're working with where there's 11 or 12-year-olds. Some of the boys, the very sporty boys, just couldn't sit still, and so they were out on a basketball court, and the teacher was saying, we want you to get those boys, and a few girls as well, to walk 2 laps of the basketball court, but they have to do it in exactly 320 steps or something. And so they're just literally counting their steps as they go around. They're quite competitive, so they're trying to make it back on the 320th step. And then other kids were listening to classical music and trying to write down the instruments they could hear, and other kids were colouring in. And I remember saying that at a conference once, and someone said, just so you know, that's actually not mindfulness. Their activities. And I thought, oh gosh, have we got this wrong? But just listening to you speak, I feel like, that is mindfulness. That is, because these kids were very present. I watched the whole thing. It was one of our partnership schools. I watched it. The kids were so engaged in being wherever they were to just do that task. And they're also really enjoying it as well.
Yeah. I mean, so don't call it mindfulness, call it Dr. Pepper. Like, who cares what you call it? You're teaching how to be human, like self-regulation, like, so those skills. So, I mean, this is where we could get into the skills here, it is concentration, clarity, equanimity, and care. Concentration is the capacity to choose what you want to pay attention to, and then to let yourself get absorbed in it. It's medicine. That's a huge thing that's available for kids. Kids are in that zone. They're in that absorbed flow state all the time when they're playing and they're doing their thing. And so giving them things to get concentrated on is just a great way to help with that regulation. It's true. It's not classical mindfulness. It's absorption. It's concentration. It's a different meditative path, but it's a skill that is super valuable, and it's kind of a preliminary skill for all these practices. It's about generating stability and calm, and so that's super important to know how to do. And then you've got the skill of clarity, which is like the skill of beginning to recognize what's up with yourself. And for kids, a lot of that is emotional literacy. It's beginning to it's like with my little guy. We have this book he loves, the feelings book. He's only 2. He doesn't really, he kind of knows what these feelings are: the sad, angry, happy, but beginning to be able to describe what these, when to be able to say when it is you're in a state like that, what's going on, to be able to notice it all of a sudden is huge. Because if you can notice it, then you're not 100% in it as much. So it's the beginning of emotional regulation, is this capacity to kind of begin to talk about where your feelings are at, or right, and so that's a skill that, teachers all know this, and educators know this, and that's a skill that's right there in the heart of meditation. It's this discernment skill. Then there's the care skill, which is this. It's like the skill of just doing something well, or treating someone well, of caring about that, teaching a kid how to hold a piece of wood, or how to hold a plant or an animal in a way they'll naturally do it. They'll kind of hold it in a way that is caring, and say, hey, look, what are you doing with that? I mean, I do that with my little guy. With this, he wants to smash up his stuffed animals, but he knows, he starts making this weird high voice, and that means he's starting to go into this caring mode with his little mangled banana creature thing that he's got. So this skill of care is something you teach kids, and it's something you teach adults too, and the kids are way more open to it. And then finally, the equanimity is kind of the one it's the hardest to articulate, and it's the most mystical, magical one.
Yeah, equanimity is that's the word that keeps coming up in your meditations, and it's a word that I honestly had never heard before doing your meditations, and it's clearly such an important part. And I think I now understand it, but I mean, you're about to explain it, but it seems like kind of like the thing, like concentration and care are things that people have probably been introduced to or heard of before meditation. But equanimity for me was like the new thing that put a term on something that I couldn't really pinpoint before listening to you.
Yeah, well, it was the same experience for me. It was my teacher Shinzen Young, who is really big on equanimity, and I didn't even have a concept for it. I mean, I kind of thought, I knew sort of meant like balance or something, but in terms of what it actually is right now in your experience, it's the part of you that knows how to. You're taking a breath, and all of a sudden, or you can see that you're obsessed. You want to say this thing, and instead, you take a breath out, and you kind of let the thing go. It's learning how to be frictionless, because what's happening all the time is that we're kind of fixated in our experience. We're holding on to things or pushing other things away. It's like we're in this mini tug of war all the time with this layer of interference in our minds and bodies. And equanimity is just, I'm not going to go into this tug of war. I can just drop this and just be present and let my impulse just pass through me. And it's the same as, or to give it another, if it's not clear, because it's still going to be not clear for lots of people, it's when you're vulnerable in a conversation. You're like, someone says something and you're like, oh, fuck, I don't want to say it. You're like uptight about it. Then you're like, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to say it. And you just say the thing you really feel and you let it out. There was a letting out. There was a softening inside that let the thing come out. It's learning how to disappear, how to be transparent, how to just let life go through you, let yourself as part of life rise up and go through you, and just back off and be in this, it's space. And you get the taste of it. We all know it. We all know it. You know what it's like when you were chatting with somebody and you weren't really paying attention. All of a sudden, boom, you see them. You're like, oh yeah, this person. That's equanimity. You just showed up and you let the interference go for a second. And so it's this thing my teacher calls it it's a taste. You learn to taste it. You learn to taste what it's like. And at a point in meditation, you can always find it. And it's the 0 point, because it's just emptying all the time. This all sounds like crazy shit now, but you go into equanimity, you are just letting yourself be nothing. You're getting over the self. The self is just running its course, and you're just letting yourself not be that. It's the thing that knows you're not the self. You're so much bigger. You're everything. And you can come to that experience of it, in a way that's not a big deal, not some weird mystical transformation. you just did this little adjustment inside yourself, and you let your little self just kind of do its thing, and you kind of pan back and hung out here.
So Jeff, just so I just finished writing a book. As in, when I say just finished, as in this morning I sent an email saying it's done. I can't. It's going to print this afternoon, and the book's called Let Go. And I just
you want to change the title now?
Well, a couple of things. I want to change the title, but it's too late. But I feel like I've just spent like 10 months of my life trying to say what you just said in 2 minutes there. Like it's just. Yeah. I love that so much. And so much what I've tried to write about in very long-winded ways is what you've just said so beautifully and so succinctly just then. It's such a simple concept, but like Ryan just said, like having not heard you speak about that before.
Yeah,
I've literally spent 10 months of my life trying to explain what you just said, what you just said then. That's such a powerful thing, isn't it?
Well, it's like, I mean, like hearing about equanimity from you, Jeff, and through the calm meditation, especially the How to Meditate course, that 30-day course that anyone can do on calm. That was, and I think it's been a number of things in my life, like whether it be like therapy or even doing this podcast or reading books. But I definitely, I'm positive that regularly hearing you talk about that, like every morning, as like a reminder. I really do believe that it's helped me, because when you said frictionless, that feeling of frictionless when you like let something go, I think I've got a little bit better in the last year, and a good time to get better at it too. I've got a little bit better at letting some things go that I would usually that would usually get to me.
Totally.
And whether it be like, I just watched that show. I don't know if you've watched The White Lotus. No. The TV series. It's an HBO series. Anyway, it's about like white privilege, and it's about like these rich people staying at a resort. And there's this one character who is kind of he's kind of like the really like real asshole, privileged, come from lots of money, complains, like can never be grateful for anything. So he's staying in the second best room, but he thought he was going to be staying in the best room, essentially. And he spends the whole series like fighting with the manager about like he wanted the best room, he was promised the best room, he didn't get it. And I just sort of felt, even though I'm not that guy, he was like this extreme asshole. I definitely saw there were parts of myself that I saw in him where it's like where I've been somewhere really nice and it's not exactly how I wanted it. And I'll let it get to me, and I'll get annoyed, and I'll be like, I know it. This is fine, but I did ask for, and I'll let little stupid things get to me. But since doing your meditation courses through Calm, and then also probably reading books, just being more conscious of that, I've definitely gotten way better at letting those things go, which are so meaningless. Like they're so stupid. Yeah. But I would let them really get to me years ago.
Well, you and everybody. I mean, me too. But it's true that part of it is a kind of energy efficiency, actually. It's like, do I really want to waste all this energy and time worrying about this thing? Does this really matter, the big picture? It's like as you get older, you're just like, I'm tired. Yeah, I'm done fighting these stupid battles. I don't need things to be perfect. I'm just gonna, you start to. That's part of what I think. That's why I actually think that my thing about meditation is it basically accelerates the aging gracefully gradient. Because there's lots of cool old people who figure this out on their own, and they basically figure out like, I'm just gonna go with the flow of life. You're not gonna get so uptight and fight every battle, and you learn how to be a little kinder to yourself. Like there's a gradient that aging will take you there. I mean, eventually it'll take you there. It's taken everyone there. You're all going to go into the zero. So either you're going to get ripped apart on the way, or you can kind of let yourself go and kind of just not let yourself go. Like, you know what I mean? Just let some of these battles go. And I think that, so really I see a lot of similarities in experienced meditators that I do in smart old people. And often they're the same people. So, because there is this, but that's why I think people are like, I don't know if it was the practice that's helped, or maybe I've just, gotten older and wiser. It's like, same thing.
I certainly think though that I think it definitely is. And I can't tell, and I guess it doesn't really matter. Like who cares? But like sometimes I do try and think about what, I've definitely felt a change, and whether it has, like in myself, I mean, in the last, like say 5 years, for example, and I can't tell whether it's like, is it just aging? Is it just like getting older and, caring less about the things you used to care about? Excuse me. Or is it the meditating, or is it reading this particular book, or was it that YouTube video that I watched and I can't remember what it is, or there's so many things that
All of
enter
it.
our,
And you can never know.
it's all of it. Yeah.
It's once you start on this, what I find really interesting is once you start on this path, it just kind of goes itself at a certain point.
Yeah.
It's weird. I mean, it's almost universal, people describing this. Once they kind of commit into a practice, whatever the practice is, once they start getting interested in, their being, like how to kind of be in the world in a way that's just a little less dickish and a little more ease, it's like something clicks and you start kind of getting the lessons. Sometimes you go through a shit show on the way because it's like you get still and all your stuff comes up. So it's not like necessarily an easy road, but there is a sense in which it just starts kind of unfolding and you kind of you're getting the lessons that you need. And who knows causally what little part is. Sometimes you can identify something or someone that's really helped, and other times, I don't even think it's always perfectly linear. Sometimes it feels like a very non-linear process, and it's interesting.
I like what you just said before. I just wrote it down, to make the world a little less dickish. I think making the world a little less dickish is a good bumper sticker,
especially at the moment.
Yeah, no kidding.
Jeff, I just listening to you speak, I'm thinking back. I don't know why I did this. I guess I wasn't being very present, but I started thinking about the topic of I started thinking about happiness. And I was thinking, if I look back, if I was to list the 10, 20 happiest moments of my life, like moments I could really remember that just, for me, I look back and go, oh, just so happy then. I've realized they're also the times I was most present. Mm-hmm. Like there was nothing, I was just so there, so immersed in what was happening. And I realize, I mean, that surely is not that happiness is the goal. I don't think happiness is the goal, and it's not, I mean, it's lovely, but it's not, we're always going to feel happy. That's an unrealistic expectation. But there's a strong link between being present and feeling joy, I would have thought.
No question. No question. For me, my happiness when I was younger was like peak experiences. It was being a partier. It was like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was like raging with my friends at a house party. And it was like, yeah, or like extreme sports. And that's what I thought happiness was. And now I'm like a dad. I'm up to my eyeballs in human feces and various responsibilities. And everything is very slow. And we're in COVID still. And it's lockdown city. And I just, those peak experiences aren't there in the same way. And it's like, I'm having to learn to recalibrate to a different kind of fulfillment, what I would describe not as an up or not as a down, but as like a width, like a kind of depth dimension to things. So in the very ordinary, simple things, there's a kind of bittersweet poignancy of being human thing. You really feel this as a dad or as a parent. And that is rich. It's rich. It's good. It's not a Disney movie. It's just it's what it is to be human. And I'm having to like train myself to appreciate the flavor of this kind of happiness. And it's a deeper, it's no baloney. And it's different than that peak experience, but I'm learning to like it. Yeah.
Josh, in fact, I might spin a laptop round so you can see Josh.
Yeah. I just want to say, like, what before Josh, the thing that I realized like a year ago, whenever it was, and I went through a real, and I still love him, but I went through a massive Eckhart Tolle phase. I just got dug real deep. You know him?
No, I don't know him. I mean, I know his shit. I read his books. I'm like, yeah, power now.
So that was close.
Bring it on, New Earth. But, he lives in Canada. He's a little German elf on the West Coast.
Oh, is he? Oh. Well, the thing that from all of, because he's all about power of now, like being present, like exactly what you were talking about, like so much what you're talking about. And when I realized that, and I had, it was like the biggest two biggest realizations of my life. One, swap out the beef patties for McChicken patties and a Big Mac. The second one is that you don't the goal shouldn't be to be happy. Like, because what is happy? Like, happiness is this weird thing that we're told to like go for, and that this is this like goal. But when I realized that actually the goal is to be present, like that is the ultimate goal. Like that, this is at least what Eckhart Tolle will say. And if you can do that, kind of like what you were saying, Hugh, and what you were saying, Jeff, it's like that happiness, whatever that means in that particular moment of that particular situation, that will be the equivalent of happiness or fulfillment or whatever that may be in that moment. But don't aim for happiness, because what the fuck is happiness? Like, what is that? It's a word that could mean a billion different things, but it's a more practical goal to aim for presence. Anyway, I just wanted to essentially say what you guys just said, but I wanted to be involved.
Me and Eckhart, man. We're going to be hanging on the beach in British Columbia. Eckhart, it's so good to be present with you here, my friend. Can I try that robe on? And I'm going to take my shoes off here and feel the stones in my toesies.
Eckhart wouldn't wear shoes. I think he's floating.
He's walking
floating
across
around.
the water. I'm like, oh, what? Watch out for that orca. No, not a problem.
He would call his
rides
toes
the
toesies,
orca across to Germany. The magical orca. I've come back to Germany to sort out your politics.
Love it. Josh, sorry.
I don't know how to segue from Eckhart Tolle impersonation, but I was struck by you talking then about how you don't need these. You were talking about partying and like these extreme moments of, I guess you could say, happiness and these really high stimulus things.
Josh is very good at those, just for background. He's very good at partying.
I've certainly enjoyed it. But my question was to the role of because I feel like an addiction is linked to that, and people who have addictions of infinite varieties. Not being an expert on this, but it feels like it must be some kind of endless craving to repeat that sense of happiness and joy. So I was sort of interested to hear your opinion and thoughts on the role of meditation and addiction and how they can interplay.
Yeah, well, like it has a huge role to play. I mean, let's back up and look at how the mind works. The mind crowded with worries and concerns, with suffering and hurt and past traumas and whatever else. And the mind learns how to get through it by focusing, by putting it in a particular direction that will make it feel okay. So whether it's work, whether it's music or whatever it is, like I have my thing that I've got to do. I got to get this. I got to do this because I don't know how to be otherwise. Like this is my safe space. And we're all addicted in that sense. And then there's just those deeper addictions lurking and looming beyond it, those immediate transformations where you can have a few drinks or you can pop a few pills or you can shoot up this thing here and your problems are going to go away. And they emerge from not being able to be here in our life. People are in pain. So, meditation, it will make that dynamic really clear. And then it can help sort of show you how to back up out of those things and spread whatever healing needs to happen around to the other parts of your life. But, it depends on how deep down you are. You're going to need different kinds of support at different stages in the journey. I mean, I'm very reluctant to ever recommend meditation it's just not a cure-all for anything. It's like, it can be huge help, but often we need a more one-on-one support, or we need trauma work, or we need to work with, and a lot of what a good trauma therapist will do is actually, or a good addictions counselor will work with you one-on-one in a way that's introducing some of these skills. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's the same skills that are going to be leading to the healing, but it's just happening in different forms. So, yeah, I mean, I have met addicts who just did it on their own and were able to do the meditation was a big part of it. I've also met many who needed to have other kinds of support structures in place. And also just the whole question of addiction and mental health, like you can't even talk about that without talking about the environmental factors that are what are feeding those things. Like, you can quote do all kinds of things to help an addict and to transform things. Then you drop them back in the same environment and the same behaviors start up, because it's as much to do with the environment as it's to do with what you do internally. So there's so many layers and dimensions to how healing has to happen with these different kinds of conditions that we can talk about. But I do think meditation can play an important role in that, particularly about getting clear about what's happening inside the mind,
It certainly it seems like it would be an incredibly important base and practice underneath to support dealing with the core issues, if that makes sense. Because I guess there's, as you said, there's pain, there might be and environmental issues and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
it feels like having it.
Totally.
Sorry, go on.
The promise of meditation is happiness independent of conditions. That's how my teacher first articulated to me in a way that made sense. Whether you want to call it happiness or fulfillment, it's like a direction that as you commit to a life of practice, you start to see how that is actually not a total fantasy. You can start to understand in a more realistic way how to find. I don't know if you ever get to total happiness all the time, independent conditions. Like maybe there's someone on the planet like that, but you definitely start to know how to move in that direction, how to find more and more situations where there isn't this hungry ghost, unhappy, craving, suffering person under the surface, where actually you notice, wait a second, I'm actually happy right now, and it's not. And at first there's this, you got to have to learn how to appreciate simple things. And this was a big thing for me too. I remember asking this one teacher, like, oh, when am I going to, find peace in my heart? Either it's really agitated or there's just nothing in there. And she was like, well, that nothing is peace. I was like, it's like, the absence, these absences are nurturing. So kind of tuning into those sorts of things, they start to become more and more available in more and more situations. And, but as long as you're in the loop of needing to get your fix, whatever that is, needing to get your thing, needing to get your life just right, setting up this condition just so, getting this thing at work, having this perfect relationship, this perfect thing, you're in a loop. I mean, this is Buddhism 101. You're in a loop of suffering, because you can never, you get what you want. And then all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of new things you want to get. You forget that the things you have right now are the things you once wanted. That's why Jack Kornfield's like, happiness is wanting what you have.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm blabbing at 2,000 miles an hour here. Sorry, fellas, but you got the bipolar
it's incredible.
going.
It's really incredible, Jeff. I mean, conscious of not taking up too much of your time. I know it's like probably getting to bath time for not for you, but for your child. But I just want to mention and ask you if you want to talk about your weekly do nothing project.
Mm-hmm.
Probably as we're on the subject of doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think you still do that, don't you?
I do.
On YouTube.
I get a good number of Australians who tune in, actually, because I think the time difference, I think it's when is it? Well, it's 8 at night, my time would be like I think it's like
it's like mid-morning,
11 in the morning your time or something.
Yeah.
So it's been happening for a couple of years. It's truly not a big deal at all. It's Sunday night, 8 o'clock my time. I just go on. I usually have no idea what I'm gonna do. I just say hello, and then I guide a simple 25-minute practice that's a version of doing nothing. There are and then it'll pepper in, like, I just try to talk about what disaster happened in my day and if there's any relevant thing there sometimes. So it's like just being real about how we're working with meditation. And then so sometimes there's kind of a deliberate thing we're exploring, but often there's just a reason to sit around and not do anything and take that break. And it's like a bit of a reset. And I really look forward to it because I meditate when I do it. So, but yeah, if you were watching it, it's on YouTube. It's the worst thing. It's like badly made, and it's just looking at me with my eyes closed. And half the time I fuck up the audio, and something else happens, but we still do it.
Sounds perfect.
Sorry, so how do people find it, Jeff? Is it on, like, what do they look up?
Yeah, they just go to my website, jeffwarren.org. Because it didn't have any other dot things. Who knows what .ca means, which is the Canadian one. So I got
I'm sure .biz or .tv could have been available.
Asshole. .bastard.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So .org, they go to that, and then they click on, there's a little YouTube link in the top right, and then it'll but all the events it'll show when the next one's coming up, and literally you just click on that and you click on the YouTube link, and then it just shows up, and you can watch the archive of the ones after, but there truly are underwhelming. So it really is mostly just sitting there with your eyes closed, not doing anything. I think some people find their way there thinking it's going to be this interesting thing with some wisdom or something. Yeah. There's very little wisdom. It's truly not interesting.
But the way you're talking about it now, this is what I really love about you, is that this is very relatable, the way you're talking about this. I wish more people's first introduction to mindfulness is the way you talk about it and the way you talk about yourself. Because this, like, I'm going to tune in to this. I have people send me mindfulness stuff all the time because they want me to promote it in the schools or wherever we work. But I don't often go and check it out. I'm definitely going to watch this because it's so relatable the way you just explained it. I'm interested to see someone do something which they think is not very good, but they do it anyway. So I'll definitely absolutely be tuning in.
Right on. Well, say hi, and then you can say hi in the chat. That's the best part about it, is everyone says hi, and most people don't do anything, but some people say hi. It's fun.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I know we're taking a lot of your time. I just had a question that relates to this kind of generally, and I guess it's kind of not wanting to go on about myself too much, but it's sort of my story of meditation, which is that when I was 19, I think, I wasn't very happy. I started seeing a psych, and that psych, I think, was probably quite brilliant, but his demeanor and mannerisms we didn't click that well, I don't think. But he was very insistent that I had to start meditating, and was really kind of like, I'd go in there and I'd say stuff that was happening. He's like, well, you're clearly not meditating enough, was kind of his answer to everything, which kind of annoyed me at the time. And I did, it was annoying. And I tried then, and then I didn't do it again for another 8 or 9 years. And then I did it for quite a bit. I did like a sort of a year of daily practice, and then I stopped, and I've always been dipping in and out of it. And there was a phrase that you used before that honestly brought a tear to my eye. I think it may be because it relates to so much in my life. Well, yeah, so that's going to sound depressing now when I link it to this, but you said you're doing something with this cumulative sense of failure, and the anger and anguish that comes with it. And I still feel like, because I haven't meditated for probably a year, this cumulative sense of failure and intimidation of going back to do it again.
Yeah.
And I just was wondering if you had any thoughts on for not just me, but I'm sure there'd be thousands of people out there who have dipped in and out of meditation but feel guilty for not keeping it going.
Yeah, I mean, I would just don't make a big deal of it. Meditation is about just sitting there and doing nothing in the moment. So you can restart it at any moment. There's no, just do it. You just sit there, don't make it a big deal. Do it for a couple minutes, and do it for 5 minutes, and I think let it be enjoyable. Kind of just let it be like what I was saying off the top there. Let it be somewhere where there's a nice view, or in a park, or let it be like a quiet corner of your house where you're just enjoying your own company doing nothing, and don't make it into anything else than that. And start to notice, I would just say then from there, start to notice what that feels like, kind of sitting there doing nothing. Like when you're still, how do you feel that? Get kind of curious about simple things in your experience, and it'll just unspool from there. And it can't hurt. The self-compassion piece, it's interesting. It's always a kind of funny one to bring up because people don't like the sound of it, or they think it sounds right away. It puts off the cheesy alarm, but it ends up being a lot of what a lot of people need. People don't need to get enlightened. People need to be a little easier on themselves, a little kinder to themselves. And this thing of holding yourself to this standard of, I don't know what it is. People think that they're going to be perfect in this life. You're going to screw up, and you're just going to bring all your humanness to the table. And you got to learn to be okay with that and to be kind about that. And that the practice can teach that too. And then you're interesting because you don't want to get to perfect. That would be super boring. You want to get to just being who you are and honest about what it is you're experiencing. That's an interesting human being that I would want to hang out with,
Yeah, that that was the way you described that. Because I was before I found the How to Meditate course, I'd tried a bunch of different things, and it was different people, different sort of guided meditations, and I had a similar vibe where I was like, I'm not getting it, and because the tone of the teacher running it was quite sincere and serious, there was no fun element. I think that was the missing piece for me with the way that you approach it. It works for me. The element of like, don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take meditation too seriously. It's just like show up, sit here for 10 minutes. That's all you got to do. You'll go in and out, but try your best, and that's all you got to do. And that was just like revolutionary to me.
I'm glad. Yeah.
And I think it will be for a lot of people. I think a lot of people haven't been exposed to a practice like the way you do it. And I think people who listen to this podcast and the way that we try and approach all elements of mental health, I think will really gel similarly to the way you do it.
Wow, that'd be cool. I mean, the thing is, there's like a fruit flavor for everyone. There are people who want a more austere, kind of soulful, challenging, like, yeah, I mean, that's awesome. And there are wicked teachers on that front, or there are people who want a more kind of sacred, soulful thing. And there's going to be that. And then there are people who want the seriousness because it's, meditation begins with the recognition that life is serious, so that could fit with someone too. So you can find but everyone, I think, can find their way in if it's presented in a, you just got to kind of know what your taste is. Or
apparently, like on the Calm app, apparently people want LeBron James. Yeah, some people apparently want that.
Totally. Yeah.
He runs classes, which
it.
I've tried the LeBron James meditation, and I just can't stop thinking, you're LeBron James.
Yeah.
Like, what do you expect?
Well, it like
LeBron
meditate on
James?
how awesome it is to be LeBron James. Just pretend, and just pretend you're LeBron James.
Yeah,
it's pretty sweet. He's on there. Yeah,
it's cool. Well, do you guys have any more things to?
I got so many more questions, but I think I just need to send you an email because I feel like we can't take up more of your time. And
not at all. It's been super pleasurable for me. I do have to get to. I can hear my little guy upstairs just clamoring for some whatever we got going on.
What's your son's name?
Pardon me.
His name? What's your son's name?
Yeah, his name is Eden, as in Garden of Eden. Eden.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
We got another one on the way too. My wife's 3.5 months.
Congratulations.
So.
Thank you.
Very exciting. It's I would say because we've got two, and I asked a friend of mine before we had our second. I said, "Is it twice as hard?" And he went, "It's about 5 times harder."
That's funny.
Yeah, so I don't know why I told you that actually. What
a prick.
Oh, you dick. I'm eating myself some compassion right now, man. This Australian bullied me on his podcast.
This is going to be the hardest 4 months of your life. Cool. See you, mate.
Yeah. Well, my friends all they're excited that I'm moving out of what they call the hobby parenting stage of having one kid.
Well,
sorry, Jeff.
Good luck with that.
Dude,
and Jeff,
thank you.
Sincerely, thank you so much. This has been even better than I was expecting, which was a lot. So thank you very much. For people who want to find out more about you or hear your meditation, go to the Calm app, look for Jeff Warren. You do a daily, new daily meditation every day, which is great.
I'm also on the 10% Happier app. I should say that because those guys got me going. Okay. Dan Harris and that
great.
crew.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. And then jeffwarren.org obviously is your website. And I'm sure people can find you wherever.
There's a zillion free meditations on YouTube and on my website too. So you don't have to pay any money. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Jeff. I really appreciate you being on.
Me too. I had a fun time. Great to meet you guys.
Yeah,
I'm coming to your basement soon, so get ready.
Please, you're welcome anytime.
And my whole family.
Thank you, mate.
Bye.
I just felt the best news for Josh there is that we actually don't need to edit that at all. I think that was just I know the whole thing was about like imperfection, but that was a perfect chat for me. That was Josh, don't change a thing.
Yeah.
I meet so many meditation people, and most of them, when I finish speaking to them, because they know I talk about mindfulness a lot, make me feel like they have this way of making me feel like I'm not enough.
Yeah.
Like I actually don't know that much. And I feel like it's almost like with him, I just feel like what I'm doing is fine. Like I'm trying my hardest, and me personally with meditation as well. Like, I just love him. Absolutely love him.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to send him an email.
Yeah. And ironically, he talks about equanimity, and he was talking about that frictionless and ability to let things go. which is sort of like the cornerstone, at least for him, the cornerstone of being present and being calm and being, sort of whether it's meditating or just being in life. But ironically, it's often the thing that experts don't have. Like they latch onto things and go like, hey, you can't do this, you've got to do this.
Yeah.
It's like, just let people do what they do, unless it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Of course, if it's dangerous.
If they're not doing harm, just let them go.
You never know. Maybe it'll work for some people.
Yeah. Did you guys have something in your head that popped up when he was, maybe Ryan, you've already thought about this because this is not a new concept to you, but did you have anything in your head of like, I've got to let that go? Like, did anything pop up for you?
I have memories of doing it, not anything at the moment that I need to.
Right.
But I did think, because I'm going to take Charlie in about 5 minutes after this, I did think I'm going to be such a good dad for the next hour with him.
Yeah,
I'm
just for an hour.
Be letting everything go. and then the tension will rise again.
It'll be so much. That's good. You only have to do it for an hour. Then after that, you can go back to just being an absolute arsehole.
Yeah.
So that's exciting to look forward to.
Lucky Charlie.
But yeah, that was good to kind of let what he was talking about there with mindfulness for kids, and to just be it sort of comes from you.
Yeah.
You just have to set a good example. But I feel like that's just the case with life in general. And that was certainly one of the big takeaways in the book, my big life-changing book, which was The Courage to be Disliked. Yeah. One of the big things in that is just like, if you do the things, don't like preach it to everyone. Don't feel like you need to preach it to everyone else all the time. Just do the things and be as good a person and be as compassionate if you do that, it's contagious. Like other people will join the party. You don't even have to say anything. Just do it.
Yeah. See, the whole thing with one of the things we say at the Resilience Project a lot with schools to parents is that the most powerful way to influence anyone's behavior is to model the behaviors.
Yeah.
But I've almost been taking it too literally with meditation. Like I try and get Elsie and Benji to lie on the trampoline with me and look up at the sky and say, what can we hear right now? What can we see right now?
Mm.
So I've been doing a very literal interpretation of my own instruction to model it, like I'm modeling meditation. But I think it doesn't count when I pick up my phone, when Benji's talking to me.
You undo it.
Yeah, if Benji's saying, Daddy, can we do this?
Yeah.
I go, hey, man, I'm just checking my emails or whatever. That just listening to him speak then, I'm thinking that's actually how I need to model it. Not so much by this is how you could do a meditation, but just that, mate, I'm here. Like, I've walked in the door from work and this is where I am right now. Yeah, I'm not going to grab my phone every 5 minutes, even though it's really tempting. I'm not going to, I am expecting a couple of emails or some text messages I need to read or, do you know what? I'm here. Like that, as he was saying that, there's so many things I thought about during that chat. I couldn't help but just apply to my own life and then feel a bit insecure because I should have written about them in the book. But that to me is that was a really powerful one. Like stop modeling meditation literally and start modeling being present.
Yeah.
Just in the way you are around them. I mean, I'm not terrible at it. I think I'm pretty good at it, but I do have times where, last night, for example, I just think I could have done so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you could have too.
We've all been thinking it. Cool, guys. See you later.